So this is Baruch here at the Tikkun Elevator Kollel, and it's my pleasure to get into this Atlas of Medieval Jewish History. As I mentioned yesterday in the shiur in the last year, if you're Jewish and you're listening to these shiurim, maybe just have a moment to listen to it, then you have to understand how it is that you got to be, especially if you're an Ashkenazi Jew. But even if you're a Sephardic, I shouldn't say even, but Sephardic Jews as well, because I'm Ashkenaz, but I feel like I have Sephardic inside. At any rate, what actually happened to the Jews after the destruction of the temple in the last 2,000 years is documented in this book. After the war with the Romans that took place at that time, and the rabbis always said that Esav hu Romi, that our hated brother, our brother who hates us, our fraternal brother who hates us, Esav, became Rome, manifest in Rome, the country of bloodlust. So we come over here and we see the tremendous empire that the Romans had created, and we had yesterday's shiur. Let me get back over here. Well, a lot of pages. We had a little drawing. We'll get a better one coming up of the Roman world, because the Jews were scattered as a result of our defeat at the hands of the Romans throughout the world. The problem was that the Romans hated us with a hate that was very deep and fundamental, not necessarily obvious, but on the other hand carried out with vigor throughout the Roman Empire. Now we come to the time of the beginning of Christianity, because what happened to the Romans and all the different things, the places that they went, they became Christians. So Christianity became the symbol of Rome. And all the other buildings and so on and so forth, the wars that they fought and so on and so forth, they subsided into Christianity. And one of the main purposes of Christianity was to promote itself and to use the Jews as an example. So you see, like I say, if you're Jewish and you're listening to this little lecture that we're doing here from Haim Beinhart, then you have to wonder how you got here, because there has been persecution for a long, long time. This is a story, really, of the war at this time of the Romans versus the Jews, that is, the Roman Church versus the Jews. Now, one of the things that we have to understand is we lined out yesterday the boundaries of the Roman Empire and how great it was, and how it covered all of North Africa, all of the western part of Europe. Was that Rome was actually divided in approximately year in the 300s under Constantine into two separate Romes. There was a Western Roman Empire and an Eastern Roman Empire. The Eastern Roman Empire was called Byzantine. Now the barbarians came into the Western Roman Empire, but the Eastern Roman Empire remains. So those who said that they were in conflict, the two, that is the Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire, all became Christian, but there was a conflict between the East, which was, let's say, centered in Turkey, the places, I think that you would say like that, where Christian Orthodoxy, where would you call the Orthodox Church, which Greek Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, those places were all descended from the Byzantine. Whereas the church that we had, the Roman Church in Italy, represents the Western Roman Empire. But at any rate, they all became Christian. And subsequently, we have the question of the war between the Christians and the Jews. Now, let me just show the last two places that I did not get to. I don't know how close I can get to this. Try it this way as it goes this way. So let's look at, he has these little boxes, and we're going to be picking them up. And let me see how we can make this clear, and as clear as possible as I can make it. The first one says, in the year 418, Bishop Severus incites Christians in a place called Mahon, and he shows us where that was. It was apparently near Minorca. He says, to burn synagogues, seize Jews, and forcibly baptize them, there were 400 and 540 Jews are forcibly baptized. Now that took place over here, apparently right here in Minorca. Now number two goes over here in the north of what is today France. That then at that time it was Gaul. We have Clovis, king of the Franks, that's the French people, converts to Christianity in the year 496. So you see that what's happening over here is that gradually all of this area is being conquered by Christendom. Now let me bring us to another map, and we have what to read also, what to learn, and we'll start going through all these different ideas. And this is a map that was in the year approximately, it was the middle of the 5th century. I think it said 5th century. So he says the distribution of Jews in the middle of the 6th century. This is like the year 550 according to the current count. And what we're looking over here is the Western, or the remnant that is in this year. This is what we call the Dark Ages. The distribution of Jews in the middle of the 6th century, approximately say 550. So looking at right here, we have Italy, and we have going back into the German and French states and so on and so forth. This is all what was at one time the Western Roman Empire. Now, over here, let's start getting a little bit of this. Let me see if I can bring this up to where we can see it. Now, he has these various different things. You see that the Roman Empire, this Western Roman Empire, also was all the way across northern Africa. All these different names, which are maybe were important at that time. I don't know if they're important today. But here he has little different boxes that he shows us different incidents that we have to understand. In the year 533, the conquest of the Vandal kingdom. Okay, apparently this takes place in a place called Utica in northern Africa. He said by Belorasius, edict issued at that time ordering conversion of synagogues into churches. So this is the war of the church versus the Jews. Number two, over here in a place called Bourrion, there was ancient Jewish community forced to convert, and its synagogue turned into a church. The war of the Christian world versus the Jews. And for the sake of of understanding what's going on, today, this area right here, are all of these different names of all of the different places. It gives you an idea of where Jewish communities were located in the eastern part of what became the Eastern Roman Empire, which is called Byzantium. And all of these different places has incidents too, because as far as the Western world was concerned, that is the Western Roman Empire, what is left of it, which is now Christendom, was not as severe on the Jews at this time as it was in Byzantium, because Byzantium also had control over the area which would say today is Israel. Here's Gaza, there's Jerusalem, Jaffa, and so on and so forth, all these different names. These are places where there are large Jewish communities. So it also, so we saw the rest of the map. This is what the Persian kingdom looked like at that time, and here you have the Persian Gulf, if you want to get an idea where we're at. And then moving over here into Arabia, along the coast, and in different places, there were many Jewish communities. Let me see if I could bring that up, where they could be seen. Now understand that during this period, you have a time of persecution of Jews. So right over here in number 3, he says 540, Justinian, busy in Italy, neglects the eastern front. Khosrow advances toward Mesopotamia, northern Syria, and Cochin. Now, all of this, I'm not sure exactly where it is or what it means, but let's go on and we'll see a little bit more. In the year 561, over here, we are still up here in northern Turkey, or it's either Persia, or today this part of this is some of the Turkmenistan or different kinds of places, Turkish regions. Agreement between Persian and Justinian, who is the Eastern Roman Emperor, stipulates that area remains under Byzantine control. So we have to understand the Byzantines were a very formidable group who hated Jews. Now let's come over here and let's read if we can what this Dr. Haim, my name is blanking, Haim Beinhart is writing. So let me get this lined up. There we go. So he says information regarding the Jewish dispersion is sparse. One may learn about the way of life of the Jewish communities from the canons of the church synods of the church that convened in Europe. For example, one of the rules of the Council of Elvira in southern Spain at the beginning of the 4th century forbade Jews to bless Christian fields and Christians to eat in the company of Jews. These prohibitions were intended to prevent fraternization between Jews and Christians. In other words, their faith is really an outgrowth of Judaism, but they needed to separate them. So therefore they separated themselves. From this, one may also infer that Jews engaged in agriculture, so that's something we can know about that. So in the 5th century, church councils increasingly discussed matters involving the Jews. Although Rome was a center of Christianity, the leaders of the church were weak, thus enabling the church councils in various regions to issue canons concerning Jewish affairs. So there was not a central authority that was strong at this time. Anti-Jewish bias was prevalent at the church councils held in France during the Merovingian period, and their decisions expressed the intent to sever the social relations between the Jewish and Christian populations. So what to understand is that as long as Jews were around, it was possible that the true faith, which they claimed was Christianity, might be diluted. People would convert, leave it for the sake of Judaism. The decisions of these councils determined the relationships of the Merovingian rulers towards the Jews. However, Merovingian France admitted the Jewish refugees who fled from Visigothic persecutions. So persecutions in Europe were constant. Massacre and persecution were the fate of the Jewish communities in the lands conquered by the Byzantine armies. The Emperor Justinian I promulgated a series of novelli, which are new laws, added to the Corpus Iuris Civilis, intended to harm the Jews and restrict the livelihood of the Jewish population of the Roman Empire. One of the novelli forbade the public reading of the Torah in Hebrew, permitting the reading only in Greek. Because we're really talking about the Romans supplanted the Greek culture and absorbed it. The Jews got around the law by composing a corpus of Hebrew liturgical poetry that was incorporated in the prayers and contained references to passages in the Pentateuch is the 5 books of Moses. So this was forbidden, but on the other hand, they moved the prayers, the Torah, into the prayers. The stories of Belisarius, commander of Justinian's army over the Vandals in North Africa in 533, it put an end to their rule in the territory, and from then on the status of the Jews declined in the former Vandal kingdom, for apparently the Vandal kingdom was across this area. The Jews, Donatists, and Arians were warned against proselytizing. The status of the Jews further declined with the capture of Burium, the 5th city of Pentapolis, situated at the southwestern edge of Cyrenaica, and the Jews of this ancient community were first forced to convert to Christianity, and their synagogue was turned into a church. Many Jews fled to the free Berber tribes, who treated them kindly. So exactly, we're talking again about the same idea. The Berbers are in Morocco over here this way. So you see that the Jewish life in Europe, and Jewish life, as we'll see, in other places besides Europe, but Europe is the focus right now, was one of moving from community to community to avoid the church. The map of Jewish dispersion shows a large Jewish world extending between the borders of the Roman Empire, including the Persian or the Sassanid kingdom. The rulers of this kingdom were generally tolerant towards the Jews, allowing them to establish their own organizations and institutions, and thus providing a new political foundation for Jewish self-government through the office of what we call the Exilarch, or the Rosh, what do they call it? The Reish Galusa, the head of our exile, the lay head of the Jewish community. So it was called the Exilarch. It was a person who was like the mayor. A distant, independent Jewish community in southern Arabia maintained close contact with the Jewish community in the Holy Land, and some of its members were privileged to be buried in Beit Sha'arim in Israel. So here we have just a little picture of this. He brings out little pictures here of an oil lamp from Palestine. So you see what later would be, or what was the ancient kingdom of Egypt. And you have the Africans moving in from the bottom. And you have Jewish communities very, very far away in Arabia. Well, that's the next set that we're looking at right now. And this is Baruch Fleischman at the Tikkun Elevator Kollel.